Jared here with CarBuzz.com, and I am out in chilly Wisconsin, which is why I'm wearing this nice toasty sweater, because I'm out to drive the 2019 Toyota Prius, which now comes with all-wheel drive as an optional extra. So Toyota has flown me out with a bunch of other journalists to test out the all-wheel drive performance capabilities of this new Prius. And along with all-wheel drive, Toyota has also given the Prius a subtle refresh for the 2019 model year. You can see it has a much softer face. I really like it, especially in this pretty electric storm blue color. It looks really nice. And the front and rear are definitely cleaned up on this new model. And I'm going to take you around the outside of the Prius to show you how they've changed it and made it a little bit more pretty. Is it a looker still? Not really, but it's definitely prettier than it was in the previous model year. And if you would like to get the best deals on the 2019 Toyota Prius, be sure to click up here and check the link in the description. So coming around back, let's talk about the rear design language, because it's still a Prius, it's still a liftback, it still has this interesting dual glass design, but the taillights have dramatically changed for the 2019 model year. You can see here they got rid of that vertical element to the taillight, so it's a lot more clean now. It still looks like a Prius, it's still very recognizable, but I think that this new design is so much more clean, and I really appreciate that Toyota maybe listened to some of their buyers that were saying the Prius was a little too hectic in the 2018 model year, so they really softened up the styling. And then they kept the hatchback body style, whereas some hybrids are going SUV or sedan. They've kept this liftback, which is going to give you 27.4 cubic feet of storage space in here, even with the batteries underneath. It's the biggest in class, Toyota says, which is pretty good. And of course, the rear seats fold down. I can show you, I have them folded down here, so you can get a little more cargo space. I tested the Prius Prime recently, and that definitely takes up a lot of this trunk space with having a higher battery. But if you just buy the standard Prius, even with the all-wheel drive as this one, cargo space is very, very good. Alright, so now we're inside the 2019 Prius, and if you've been inside a 2018 model, this is going to look pretty familiar, although Toyota has changed up some things, but I'm going to go ahead and go through it with you just to talk you through some of the features here. The Toyota Prius has always foregone a typical gauge cluster. They put the gauges and everything up top here so that everybody in the cabin can see them. You still control everything through the steering wheel. We're in an XLE trim, which is actually the highest trim that you're going to be able to get all-wheel drive with. There is a limited trim above this where you'll be getting a really large 11-inch touchscreen. If you go back and watch my Prius Prime review, it's the same touchscreen found there, but the all-wheel drive cars are only going to have this basic 4.3-inch display. So let's start off with the steering wheel here. You've got your basic D-pad controls here. You can control that screen that's up there. You can have it cycle through some different things. You can have your fuel economy. You can show, because this is an all-wheel drive car, it'll show you where the power is coming from, whether it's going to the front wheels or the rear. The all-wheel drive really only works up to 43 miles an hour, so if you're driving at highway speeds, you're not really going to use that too much. And you can have your climate controls be adjusted here, which is pretty interesting. And then you can have all of your safety function as well. You have your traditional speedometer as well with the different trip modes. I can have it show my miles, I can have it show my range, or I could have it show none of that. And we do have a lot of features on this XLE trim, including lane keep assist. We do have radar cruise control in this car, and we do also have a heated steering wheel, which is great when we're in a cold area like Wisconsin. So let's talk about this 4.3-inch screen. I'm not going to harp on it too much. There's really not a lot going on here. You have your basic audio sources, AM, FM, Bluetooth, aux jack, CD, and USB. No satellite radio, interestingly, on there. You may be able to get that as part of a package, and I know on the highest trim Prius with the larger screen you do get it, but on here it doesn't seem to be available. You can have some basic setups here with your trip information. You can also, when the car is in drive, engaged. You should be able to have a larger readout of where your energy is coming from the battery, etc. But yeah, not too much going on here. I do actually prefer this setup to the larger screen. The larger screen replaces the volume and tuning knobs with like touch capacitive buttons. These buttons here, you may have noticed, are touch capacitive, but I just prefer this. It's so much easier to use. The large touch screen gets a little bit cumbersome to use. To change the radio, to adjust the fan speed, you have to do it all on the touch screen, which I find a little bit distracting. I'd much rather have these very basic climate controls on this XLE trim. And as you may have noticed when I engaged drive down here, I'm doing it on this sort of weird shifter. It's been a trademark of the Prius for many years now. It kind of defaults back to its initial position after you put it into drive. If I throw it into reverse, it will trigger my backup camera, and as you can hear, beep, 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 beep. I've asked Toyota about that because I did notice the same thing on the Lexus LS 500 press car that I had a few weeks ago. And the reason why it beeps is to remind you that it's in reverse. I know, I just put it in reverse, but because the shifter defaults back to its position, they want to remind you that you're in reverse in case you accidentally forgot. To put it back into park, you just push that button right there. You can pull down on it. That'll engage the B mode, which is regenerative braking. So when you lay off the throttle, it'll automatically bring the car, slow it down a little bit. It won't come to a full stop, but it will put some of that energy back into the battery for you. You have a few drive modes that you can play around with on this button. There's only 3 of them. There's normal, eco, power mode. Basically what that's going to do is it's going to change your throttle response. Really does make a big difference. Power mode really makes it feel a lot more sprightly, whereas eco mode makes you feel like, oh no, I can barely move the car. But you know, I drive around in normal mostly. If I want to get a lick on, I'll put it in power mode. Eco mode I don't usually like to touch that much because it makes the car feel a little too slow for my tastes. There's also this EV mode button. Kind of neat. You can drive it on electric power alone, but only at very slow speeds. So maybe in a neighborhood or a parking lot, only about up to a mile. So you're really not going to use that too much. On the plug-in model of the Prius, it's going to get you a lot more range. On the regular one, it's really just a crawling speed sort of thing for parking lots and things like that. Down here, we've got the QI wireless charging. If you have a phone that is enabled for it, you will be able to just stick it down there and charge it up. That's pretty handy. My phone doesn't have it, so I wasn't able to test it on this trip. And we also repositioned the heated seat controls. So Toyota used to have them all the way down here. It's kind of inconvenient to access. I know you kind of just flick it on and leave it, but I guess a lot of consumers complain, so now they are much more accessible right in front of the cup holders. And as you may have noticed, all of this is sort of this black plasticky trim. It used to be able to get white, but they've gotten rid of that for the 2019 model year, so black is going to be all you get down here. So now I've guided you through all of the changes for the 2019 model year up front, and I'm just going to talk real quick about what's different in the back seat. So back here, not too much is different. I have a very adequate amount of knee room and headroom back here, although I'm not that tall. Toyota has tried to make it a little more luxurious back here for people. You do have 2 USB ports here, so you can charge your devices, and they also added a pocket in the seat back so you can store some stuff. But other than that, not too different. So now we're going to go ahead and get it out on the road and tell you how the 2019 Prius drives. Alright, so now I'm behind the wheel of the 2019 Toyota Prius, and the big story here is the introduction of the all-wheel drive E system. So it's a lot different than conventional all-wheel drive that you'll find on a normal car. It uses a rear electric induction motor, which doesn't produce any drag when it's not in use. So Toyota's main goal here really wasn't performance or off-road or anything like that, although it will sort of handle the snow very well. It was mainly to try and keep the efficiency at the point where Prius buyers have become accustomed to, while offering a little bit of grip in those winter months if you do live in one of those colder climates. So Toyota says that even with the all-wheel drive system, you'll still be able to average 50 MPG, which is pretty darn good for an all-wheel drive hybrid. Toyota says it's best in class for an all-wheel drive hybrid vehicle. So let's talk about how that all-wheel drive E system works. basically it will always engage from 0 to 6 miles per hour. So every time you start, the all-wheel drive is going to be on to kind of get you going in the snow. So you're not going to have to worry about getting stuck on a hill in the snow. You're never going to have to worry about that. Then the all-wheel drive system is capable of intervening when necessary from 7 to 43 miles an hour. So if it detects some slip, it'll be able to send some power back there to keep you going on a snowy road. Above 43 miles an hour, it's going to basically turn off. Toyota says that was in an effort to try and make fuel economy as good as it can possibly be. You don't want people sacrificing too much on their fuel economy just for that all-wheel drive. So I understand why Toyota did that. So if you're driving at highway speeds, you're really not going to notice anything different about the all-wheel drive system. And basically, you're not paying too much of a penalty. It depends on which trim level you're getting. You can only get all-wheel drive on the LE or XLE trims. Check out my full review for a more specific breakdown on pricing. But the LE and XLE trims are going to be the only two that you can get with the all-wheel drive system, and it depends on which trim you get how much the all-wheel drive is going to actually add to your sticker price. I believe it's about $1,000 on one and about $1,400 on the other, so not too bad. If you do live in one of those areas where it snows constantly, this might be an option for you. If it only snows occasionally, maybe you save the money, maybe you get snow tires in the winter. They might be able to do the job that this all-wheel drive system also does. And opting for the all-wheel drive doesn't cost you too much in terms of fuel economy. As I mentioned, it will get 50 MPG combined, so you're only taking a 2 mile per gallon hit over the front-wheel drive model. Front-wheel drive models are going to get 54 MPG city, 50 MPG highway, and 52 combined, whereas this all-wheel drive model averages 52, 48, 50 city, highway combined, so not too bad. So now that we've got the all-wheel drive system out of the way, let's talk about if Toyota has actually done anything to change the way the Prius drives. Because if you watch my Prius Prime review, the Prius is definitely not my favorite hybrid to drive. There have been a lot of hybrids that have come out recently that have given you the ability to have your cake and eat it too. So you have a hybrid car that can get 50 miles per gallon, but it drives like a normal car, specifically the new Honda Insight. I thought it drove really well, like a Civic. Nice steering, nice suspension, had a bit of pep, a little bit of giddy up. The Prius still feels really sluggish. If you put it in the power mode, it does help a little bit. But a few of us asked Toyota whether or not this motor, this all-wheel drive motor, actually adds anything to the performance. And it didn't seem like Toyota was really keen on that really being the main purpose of it. The main purpose is really just to get you out of the snow if you live in those cold environments. Toyota does say that the all-wheel drive motor will add 7 horsepower and 40 foot-pounds of torque. That's quite a bit. But it's really only doing it from up to 43 miles an hour, so they're not factoring that into the Toyota Prius's overall power output. So I don't think if you're shopping for a Prius all-wheel drive that you're really going to notice those numbers actually get tacked on to the official numbers. So it still should be an output, a total output between the 1.8 liter gas engine and the motors of 121 horsepower, which is the same as the normal Prius. And of course, Toyota and Lexus do not quote torque figures on their electric vehicles. So I've noticed that the steering, I don't know if I'm just imagining this or not, but I feel like the steering is a little bit better than the last Prius I drove. Again, that could just be in my head, but essentially this is going to drive mostly like any other Prius that you've driven. The steering is pretty dead on center. There's a lot of body roll through the corners. There's a little bit of road noise at higher speeds, but at low speeds it's very, very quiet, especially when you're not relying on the gas engine. When you do put your foot down, yeah, you hear a lot of that motor droning. It's a CVT transmission, as Toyota uses in all of their electric and hybrid products, all the way from this, all the way up to the LC 500 hybrid, which is over $100,000. So they always use a CVT. You know, it drones when you need to really get a lick on, but I feel like most Prius drivers know how to drive their cars in a manner that's really not going to kick on the engine quite as often. Of course, I'm a fool, so the way I drive it kicks on the engine quite a bit. But even when it does, I'm going to go ahead and give it some acceleration now. Again, not a great noise from the engine, but I've driven other hybrids that have much louder engines than the Prius, so I really do need to commend Toyota for keeping the noise down just a little bit on this Prius. So, is the all-wheel drive revolutionary change for the Prius? In terms of driving, not really. It really does feel the same. However, I think that this is going to help Toyota tremendously sell to those cold climates. If you're living in Wisconsin here or Alaska or one of those, very, very cold states where it snows all the time and you want to get 50 MPG, this is going to basically be your only option. This is almost in a category of one. And when we asked Toyota what they're benchmarking this new Prius against, you've got your Neros and your Ioniqs and you've got the Insight, but when it comes to all-wheel drive hybrids, Toyota said that their most direct competition is the RAV4 hybrid. So they're really, competing against themselves here. There's really no other competition with this all-wheel drive Prius. So when I last drove the Prime, I gave it a worth a look because there are other plug-in hybrids that I just liked a lot better, that are a lot prettier, that drive a little bit better, and that still remains for the Prius. But I think just on the factor of being able to achieve 50 miles per gallon while also having this all-wheel drive that really does work in the snow, I think this Toyota Prius, the 2019 with all-wheel drive, has earned a score of worth a look. It's absolutely worth it if you just don't want to be that person that switches out snow tires in the winter, because I know that is kind of a hassle to do every time it gets to the winter to switch your tires out, and you just want all-wheel drive because it's simpler and you think it's going to make you safer. This is kind of your option right now, so it really is worth a look. And if you've liked this video and you'd like to see more, be sure to subscribe to the CarBuzz YouTube channel, and be sure to download our app on iOS and Android to keep up with the latest in car news and keep up on all of our reviews. Hope you've enjoyed the video. See you next time.